A friend's cryptic midnight message claimed an 8-day countdown could change everything for one of my crypto holdings. Now, I almost ignored it. Late night rumors usually go nowhere, right? But something told me I had to dig deeper. Now, I'm racing, at least the clock, to find out if a November 12th deadline might actually make crypto history for Hedera. So let me just rewind a bit, right? The rumor that my buddy dropped on me was about Hedera Hashgraph, HBAR, that altcoin that always seemed to be either on the verge of something huge or just, well, sleeping. Now, apparently the United States SEC, those fun financial regulators, have a final, no more excuses, do or die date to decide on a Hedera ETF. And yes, that is an actual spot HBAR exchange traded fund that regular people could buy like a stock. And that date, now circled in red on my calendar, is November 12th. That's just a few days away from now. Naturally, I had to know if this was for real, and more importantly, what it could mean for us HBAR holders and crypto fans. And this is going to be is it going to be a nothing burger, or is Hedera actually about to step into the big leagues? And I know, there is already a spot ETF, but more ETFs means more exposure and more demand, right? And trust me here, the deeper that I went with this, the crazier that this story actually got. Right, we're talking about surprise twists involving the SEC, even the Bank of England, and a way to even earn crypto from your phones. And even tokenized oil fields. Yeah, I know, right? So buckle up, because I didn't see all of this maybe coming straight away. Okay, so first off, the basics. The SEC, right? The people who approve or deny new for investment products, right? Now, they've punted their decisions on Grayscale's proposed Hedera ETF all the way to November 12th, 2025. And now they've run out of the road to kind of kick the can down. Now, legally, they can't delay it anymore. And yes or no time for Hedera spot ETFs. So if they say yes, then boom, we get the second US spot HBAR ETF ever. And that would give some, at least anyone with a brokerage account, regulated, simple ways to invest in Hedera outside of the one that we saw just last week. So just imagine, right? Could you potentially buy HBAR in some retirement account without messing around with crypto exchanges or wallets? It's wild. It's a wild time to be in crypto, right? And it'd be a huge stamp of legitimacy for Hedera, which we have seen, but we saw one that wasn't approved. It was just kind of put through on default so far. So an approval gives you that additional levels of legitimacy. If, however, they say no, well, I guess it's going to be back to the drawing board. We still have one spot ETF at the moment. And the SEC would actually have to spell out that they would reject it, of course, probably talk about investor protections or market surveillance. But I think it's a bit late to put the genie back in the bottle, right? Now, the thing is that no matter what really happens here, November 12th is the final deadline for this particular Grayscale ETF. The SEC has delayed this thing multiple times already, but this is it, decision day. Now, of course, rumor mills are churning, and HBAR holders like me are on the edge of our seats. I'm sitting here and thinking to myself, how did I not hear about this until now? I mean, Grayscale filed this ETF proposal months ago, and the reviews kind of kept getting postponed. Now, I guess its time is up, right? And get this, some analysts are surprisingly optimistic about it. I mean, it's hard to put the genie back in the bottle, like I say, right? I read one prediction that's saying there's a 60 to 80% chance that the SEC could approve it by the year's end. Now, that kind of blew my mind a little bit, because I'm used to kind of the SEC slamming the door on crypto ideas. Maybe the tide is actually finally turning. Maybe Hedera really does have a real shot at an approval and to get that legitimacy. Now, I've got butterflies just thinking about it, I'm not going to lie. Now, if you've only been kind of watching HBAR's price lately, then you might be scratching your head at all of this excitement, right? Because on the surface, Hedera's price has been struggling a big time, right? Now, in the last kind of few days alone, it actually dropped around 6%, and it's been sliding for weeks, roughly 18% down over the past month or so, and a solid 25% down in the last 90 days. Ouch, right? Well, it even fell through some critical support levels on the charts. So by the numbers, it looks like Hedera, has been on a bit of a bleed out mode. Not exactly what you would expect from a big ETF, or at least if a big ETF was on the horizon, right? Well, it's actually given a lot of people opportunity, myself included. I've been buying HBAR like mad. But here is the twist, right? Because despite all of the price slumps that we see, investors' interest is, of course, still sky high. In fact, trading volume on HBAR, it has surged over 22% in the last 48 to kind of 72 hours, blasting up around $319 million in turnover. Now, that tells me that there's a lot of people that are repositioning, myself included, maybe quietly loading up. I know I did, anticipating that something big is coming. Now, it's like the smart money is saying, hey, something is coming, better get ready. Now, it's kind of a weird disconnect, isn't it, right? Because the price goes down, but activity goes up, almost like the market is just holding its breath. And to be fair, this is nothing new for Hedera, right? Just a couple of months ago, HBAR was on an absolute tear, right? I remember it nearly doubling in value, something crazy like 92% at one point earlier this year. Headlines were asking if HBAR could hit a new all-time high by August. Spoiler, it didn't, right? The all-time high was around 57 cents back in 2021, and we're still way below that. Even now in the kind of 18-cent range, right? But, that hype cycle, maybe it fizzles out. They often do, right? But crypto is a roller coaster. 1 minute you're up 90% and the next you're down 25%. Now my heart, it can't really take it, not for too much longer. Actually, who am I kidding? Of course, I live for this stuff. All right, so here's the things get more interesting, because while I'm digging into all this ETF-related news, I did discover something that almost made me spit out my water, figuratively speaking, of course, because I don't drink coffee. That's a long-running joke on the channel. Anyway, a HBAR ETF already quietly launched, right? We know this one, and some people maybe have missed it completely. And yes, you would be right to think, have I missed that? Did I really see an ETF? And no, you're right, we did see an ETF. A firm called Canary Capital, they managed to get a Hedera ETF, I don't want to say approved, but through, across the line, if you will, and launched it on the NASDAQ most recently. It kind of flew under the radar, right? One day I'm reading final decision coming in November 12th, and then the next thing I see is, oh, hey, another HBAR ETF exists. My mind was kind of blown. And get this, right, on its debut, the Canary Hedera ETF actually pulled in nearly $8 million in its first day's worth of inflows. Now, to put that into perspective, they also launched a Litecoin ETF around the same time, and that only attracted $1 million on day one. So Hedera beat Litecoin 8-1 in investor money coming in. That is a pretty big deal. It signals that when the door opens for people to invest in HBAR through traditional means, a lot of people do rush on through it. Now, it was one of the strongest ETF debuts for an altcoin that we've ever seen. Now, Solana also got an ETF recently during this wave of launches, through that backdoor, not the official approvals, but just through technicalities. But even so, HBAR, it kind of stole the show right here. So, learning that one HBAR fund is already out there and trading made me kind of even more convinced that this isn't just hype. There's actually some real demand that is brewing, and if a smaller player like Canary can do it, well, imagine what Grayscale, a giant in the crypto investment world, could do if they get their approval on November 12th. Now, that could bring in even more attention and bigger inflows. I was already intrigued by the rumor, but now I'm downright excited because I've seen a glimpse of what could happen. So at this point, I'm thinking, all right, Hedera's got an ETF shot and some investor mojo. Cool. And the other headline that kind of hits be like a bit of a 1-2 punch, right? Just days after that ETF launch news, Hedera was selected to participate in the Bank of England's new Distributed Ledger Technology Challenge. Yes, the Bank of England, as in one of the oldest, most influential central banks on the planet, is experimenting with blockchain, and Hedera is on the invite list. So, of course, my eyes widened at that one. So, down the rabbit hole, right? The Bank of England, together with the BIS, that is the Bank for International Settlements, Innovation Hub, they launched a program to see how many blockchain networks can support large-scale financial transactions and even settle stablecoins. So they want to test things like transaction finality, scalability, interoperability, all the nerdy stuff, using different ledger technologies. Now, Hedera Hashgraph is one of those chosen ones to show its stuff. Now, it's in a kind of short list alongside some other really big names in crypto. I heard Ava Labs, behind Avalanche, of course. Chainlink, no-brainer. Aave, not so sure about that one, but it's still big nonetheless. But the one that really kind of has me scratching my head is Circle, right? The company that's behind USDC and how they're involved, because I don't really ever see that many trading pairs for that particular stablecoin. So I always find that one a bit of an oddball in the crypto space. Anyway, on the traditional finance side, they've got heavyweights like HSBC and even, get this, KPMG participating. Talk about an all-star team. So this is basically TradFi, traditional finance, meeting DeFi, but on a much grander stage, right? And Hedera is front and center in that experiment. So when I read this, I literally said out loud, there's just no way, right? It's like the universe has timed all of these events, right? An ETF opportunity on one hand, a central bank saying, hey, come and show us what you can do on the other. And in the very same week, nonetheless. Now, Hedera, it went from being relatively under the radar to getting called up to the major leagues. Now, if that doesn't signal mainstream validation, then I don't really know what does. By now, of course, I'm fully down this rabbit hole, right? I've got this ETF angle going on, I've got the banking angle, and I'm just thinking to myself, what else is lurking out there for Hedera? Well, it's time to dig deeper. So, lo and behold, I find out that Hedera has quietly been dominating in the realm of real-world assets. Yeah, there's data showing that Hedera is among the top networks for tokenization projects, basically bringing real-world assets onto the blockchain. It's right up there with other networks like Chainlink, Avalanche, Stellar, IOTA, right? All of these are racing to connect blockchains with things like finance, supply chains, real estate, you name it. And it's not just talk. I found a concrete example that made me do a double take. Hedera is powering the world's first tokenized upstream oil and gas fund. And yes, you did hear that right? Black gold meets blockchain, right? A company called Zonix, together with One World Petroleum, they actually launched an investment fund for oil and gas assets and put the whole entire thing on the Hedera network as digital tokens. Now, this is not a tiny experimental project either, right? It is an institutional grade regulated offering, meaning that real investors can buy a stake in an oil fund through tokens, thanks to Hedera. Now, how crazy is that, right? And just think about it, right? This is an industry that is as old school as oil drilling is, getting a blockchain makeover via Hedera's HBAR tech. Now, I would never have expected Hedera to pop up in that particular context, maybe not right now in 2025 at least. So to kind of recap that wild journey, in a span of just a few weeks here, Hedera has gone from this sleepy altcoin struggling on the price charts to making waves with an ETF, rubbing shoulders with central banks, and facilitating cutting-edge real-world asset tokenization. Meanwhile, of course, the poor HBAR token is still sitting there around 18 cents, far below its former highs. Almost like the market hasn't really caught up to all of this news just yet. So it's kind of like discovering a band before they've made it big. Right? You're staring at the gem thinking, why isn't everyone else seeing what I am seeing? And that's how I feel about Hedera right now. And honestly, this is why I love doing the deep research. Right? Sometimes you uncover that the reality of a project is just way more exciting than the actual price chart suggests. Now, amid all of this Hedera excitement, I also want to share a little side quest that I've been on, right? Something that I've mentioned in many videos before, and it ties into my whole broader crypto journey. It's called Unity Nodes, and while it's not directly related to HBAR, it's another piece of the puzzle in how I approach crypto investing and passive income. Now, I figured that some of you might actually be finding this quite interesting, especially if you're looking for those kind of, easy ways to kind of earn some passive crypto in innovative new ways in crypto space. In a nutshell, Unity Nodes is just a project that lets you earn cryptocurrency by running a small application on devices like smartphones. Right? Think of it as like mining or staking, but instead of expensive rigs, you can just use an everyday phone or tablet. Now, I was intrigued by the concept of this, verifying the telecoms grid. So I actually went ahead and purchased a Unity Masternode NFT, which essentially gave me licenses to connect up to 200 devices to that network. Now, that NFT is kind of like my ticket into the Unity ecosystem. Now, the Unity app, it hasn't gone live just yet. It is launching soon though. And when it does, I do plan to start a small test, and I'm not about to deploy like 200 phones on day one. That would be just overkill, and my electricity bill would probably scream at me, in this unproven experiment. So my plan is to actually begin with 10 phones running the Unity app to see how it all works in practice. It's all controlled in a controlled experiment. So if it is successful and everything runs smoothly as advertised, then I'm going to scale this up to more devices over time. If it flops or doesn't perform as expected, then, better to find out with 10 phones than 200, right? Now, the cool part is, with Unity, I can choose which rewards I want to be rewarded in, right? I decided to set my rewards to accumulate things like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Cardano, XRP, and if they add HBAR, you can bet that I'm going to be adding HBAR to the list too. Basically, I figured if I'm earning passively, then I might as well stack more of the major coins that I actually believe in, right? And over time, if Unity does play out and pay out the way that they hope that it does, then I'm going to be slowly growing my bags of Bitcoin, Ethereum, ADA, XRP, maybe even HBAR, right? Without actually having to buy any more coins outright. Kind of like staking or mining, but with this new little twist. So it's a great way to diversify passive income across multiple different cryptocurrencies. Now, I do want to stress this is an experiment, right? I'm super excited about it and about Unity, but I do approach it with cautious optimism. As I always say this, right? You've got to do your own research on anything that sounds just, too good to be true or just too new to the space. Now, I'm going to include some links in the description down below for Unity's light paper, the rewards calculator, all the usual stuff. And you can, check things out for yourself if you are curious. Run the numbers, read how it all works, and decide if it is something for you. Now, for those who have been following me for a while, you already know all this about Unity anyway, so it's not a new concept to the channel. But for anyone who is new, don't worry. I'm not hyping it as the next big thing, just sharing what I'm personally doing and trying to find ways to earn a bit more crypto on the side. I actually did take my Unity involvement just one step further recently. I picked up a second and third Unity nodes, and yes, I know I'm that deep into this now. But why 2 more? Well, it's because I had an idea, right, to lease out the extra licenses to members of the community, right? Because not everyone wants to buy a full master node and have 200 devices to manage, right? That's a whole ton of devices. But some people might actually want to dip their toes into Unity. So I'm thinking of offering a way for people to, in our community, to basically use, say 1 or maybe 5, 10 of my licenses with their own smartphones and just share in the rewards. For example, I'm thinking 90% of the rewards goes to the person operating the phones and 10% can come back to the channel here to support what we do on the channel. Now, obviously, you can do all this without the big upfront investment. You'll just lease a license from me, and as long as you use that license, you can keep it, right? But if you don't use a license for the 90 days, then I'll probably reclaim it and lease it to someone else, if you kind of understand the drift. More details, of course, will be posted on our website. I'll put a link in the description for that one, and of course, down in the Discord server down below. So if you're not already in the Discord, you should probably get in there. Lots of stuff going on. It's completely free, and it's where we talk about projects like Unity, dissect the news, and things like Hedera story like we're talking about today, and just try to help each other navigate the crypto space. Now, it's a really friendly, knowledgeable community, so we would very much welcome you to join us. The link, of course, for the Discord is in the description below. And speaking of, being really careful with new projects and investments in general, let me just put on my dad hat for a second and remind everyone of something super important, because this might just shock you, but I'm not a financial advisor, and nothing in this video is financial advice. Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile, and you could lose all of the money that you invest. You should always do your own research and consult a qualified professional. After all, your investments are entirely your own responsibility, and you should know that nothing is ever guaranteed when it comes to investing. Neither I, this channel, nor YouTube are liable for any losses, and this video is for entertainment and educational purposes only. All right, now that the disclaimer is out of the way, let's get back to Hedera and that ticking clock, right? Because here I am with all of these kind of puzzle pieces, right? A big SEC decision that's just around the corner, providing the shutdown ends, of course. And Hedera is making moves in the institutional finance and real-world asset use cases. So you've even got my own little kind of experiments going on with the Unity nodes, right? So I'm just kind of stack more crypto on the side. So it's kind of like a lot to take in, I know. But let's connect all of this by a common thread, right? It's the crypto ecosystem that is maturing and interweaving with real worlds in ways that maybe we couldn't really imagine just a few years ago. So the big question then is, are we on the cusp of something huge for Hedera? Or will November 12th come and go quietly? Now, honestly, I'm more excited and yes, a little bit nervous about this than I've ever been before about an altcoin news like this in a while, right? And if the SEC does give a green light, then Hedera is going to get that level up moment, a legitimacy boost that could bring in a wave of new investors. Now, we might finally actually see some price action that reflects all of these positive developments. You know how it kind of goes, right? Good news doesn't always immediately pump a coin, right? But when it does hit, it can hit pretty fast. And ETF approval could actually be the catalyst that wakes up HBAR. Now, on that note, I should probably also say that it's important to also understand that when the Bitcoin ETF launched back in January of 2024, Bitcoin actually immediately tanked by 21%, right? So basically, the ETF launched and bam, the price drops 20%. It was a classic case of buy the rumor, sell the news. But after that 2-week crash, Bitcoin went on to new all-time highs. Now, we've just seen Solana ETFs, we've just seen Litecoin ETF, and we've just seen a HBAR ETF, a Hedera ETF. And of course, we've seen another pullback in the market. So was it a case of buying the rumor and selling the news, and what happens afterwards is new all-time highs? It's food for thought. On the flip side, of course, if the SEC says, nope, not this time, then I expect short-term disappointment, right? The price might dip a bit more and might stay a bit flat for a while. And of course, the Twitter chatter will, of course, moan and groan like it always does. But I won't be phased either. And here is why. Because everything else that I've uncovered about Hedera remains true, doesn't it? Right? The central bank trials, true. The real-world asset projects, true. Right? The strong community and developments, true. None of that is going to vanish with one regulatory setback. Now, it might delay some big influx of money, sure, but it doesn't change the fundamentals. Now, in fact, if they do reject it, Grayscale or someone else could just make a few tweaks and propose again, and just try again, or even appeal the decision altogether. The door might just get knocked on once again until, eventually it actually opens. Ultimately, this whole journey has taught me something. I started out chasing an ETF rumor and ended up with a much broader appreciation of Hedera's ecosystem and its momentum. It's a reminder that sometimes when the price is quiet, the real action is actually happening behind the scenes. Hedera was quietly building partnerships, proving itself in serious arenas, and most people had absolutely no clue. Now, I almost had no clue myself if my friend hadn't nudged me in that direction of that deadline, right? I might have missed a lot of this. Now, of course, I say that tongue-in-cheek because this is my job, right? I don't miss a beat, but it does make me wonder, what other projects are out there that have this kind of under-the-radar progress actually going on? Anyway, here's how I'm moving forward, right? I've got November 12th circled in my calendar, and I'm going to be watching the news like a hawk from that day. Now, I'm not expecting fireworks on the day necessarily. Like I discussed, sometimes these decisions, they come with a formal notice, and markets, they take a beat to react. But you know what? I am prepared. I've got my popcorn ready for all of the drama. I've got my plan A, my plan B, my plan C, all in place for trading. And by that, I mean I've made sure that I have multiple exchanges at my disposal in case one gets overloaded or goes down during any volatility. That's another pro tip that I swear by the way. Always have multiple backup exchanges verified and ready to go. I'm talking about, Binance, Coinbase, LBank, Blowfin, BitGet, Kraken, you name it, right? And a few others, of course. Now, all of which I've signed up for. I've done the KYC if I need to in advance, and I've tested withdrawals, right? All of those exchanges, they are linked on my website, and yes, they are affiliate links on there, meaning that if you do use those links, then I do earn a commission from the exchange at no extra cost from yourselves. It helps support the channel here. So if you do go ahead over to the website and check out all of the exchanges that I personally do use, then I want to say a big thank you if you do. But seriously, having multiple options has saved my bacon more than once when an exchange suddenly halted trading or withdraws. Now, I never want to be stuck in a situation where I cannot access my crypto or execute a trade when it counts. So, come what may on November 12th. I'm going to be ready. If it's good news, then you bet that I'm going to be sharing that excitement with you guys and maybe even doing a happy dance or two. And if it's bad news, well, we're going to dissect the reasons and figure out what the next steps are likely to be. Now, that's the beauty of this space. There's always a next step or a new angle to consider. At the end of the day, Hedera's story over the last few weeks has reignited my passion for uncovering these hidden gems and storylines in crypto. I went looking for one answer and ended up finding a whole new treasure trove of insights. It just goes to show, never count out a project that's keeping its head down and building. Right now, whether you hold HBAR or not, you should probably keep an eye on what happens next, because it might just be the bellwether for how other altcoins get treated by regulators and institutions going forward. Now, I do hope that you've enjoyed coming along on this little adventure with me today. I tried to give you a bit of a front row seat to my thought process here, the surprises, the skepticism, the aha moments, if you will. So if you did find this journey a bit eye-opening, maybe as I did, then you can do me a favor by hitting that like button and the subscribe button, and maybe even joining our free Discord server. I'd love to have you as a part of the community as we kind of navigate what comes next. So have a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.